The biggest key to winning in fantasy football is identifying the next RB1. That guy that takes it to the next level and becomes a fantasy stud. Guys like Rashad White, Jahmyr Gibbs did that last year. So who's it going to be in 2024? If you just can't wait to draft for next year, you don't have to. Get on UnderdogFantasy.com and you can join Best Ball Mania 5, their flagship contest, with up to $15 million in total prizes. Get in the best ball action right now. Sign up with code ENDGAME to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. All right, Chris, so we know there's a lot of running backs that could be good for fantasy, but who's going to be great?
The first guy I've got my eye on is Isaiah Pacheco. He was the RB14 in points per game last year, so he kind of just missed being an RB1. But I really like his chances of being at least an RB1, if not potentially a top 5 running back this year. Because when you look at it, for years we said, hey, Chiefs, you can't really trust the Chiefs running back. They use a committee, they use a bunch of guys. Well, that wasn't the case last year. Pacheco had a 72% opportunity share, which was 8th most in the entire NFL. The Chiefs seem to finally trust Pacheco and feel like this is the guy. We can give him the ball in big situations, early down, third down. It doesn't matter. It's going to be Pacheco. And the other thing I really like about Pacheco going into 2024 is last year we saw a Chiefs offense that for the first time under Patrick Mahomes wasn't really elite. And that's always going to hurt a running back to some degree because it's going to be less opportunities to score, less chances for touchdowns. Well, guess what? The Chiefs have seemed to fix this. Not only did they go out and sign Marquise Brown in free agency to give him a dynamic playmaking wide receiver, they then traded up to draft Xavier Worthy, the fastest wide receiver in this entire class, who's also a good wide receiver. So you add in the fact that there's already got Travis Kelce, they've already got Rashee Rice for however many games he plays, Marquise Brown, and now Xavier Worthy. We could see this Chiefs offense look like the offense we're used to that is constantly putting up huge point totals, getting in the red zone, which means more and more chances for Pacheco to score. So getting the clear RB1 on the Kansas City Chiefs, an offense that is likely to be at least top 5 in 2024, feels like an absolute winning combination to be a breakout RB1 this year.
All right, well, I'm going to talk about a guy who's usually drafted about the same range as Pacheco. Believe it or not, hasn't really reached RB1 status yet. You know Kenneth Walker's name. You know that he's going to be reliable for fantasy, but does he have another gear in terms of fantasy points? I think he does this year. Now, again, this is somebody who maybe sometimes even gets drafted late as an RB1, but he hasn't really done it. Look, his first 2 years, he's actually been, I would say, slightly underwhelming. RB19 last year in fantasy points, and it's not just because he missed a couple of games. He was only the RB20 in terms of points per game in full PPR. His rookie season, remember before Zach Charbonnet was even there, it was kind of the same. He was the RB18. RB17 in points per game. So you know this is not a guy who really catches a lot of passes out of the backfield. You know, he hits those home runs, make those big plays, but is he really going to get enough touches, enough opportunities to be an RB1? I actually think this year he might, because now we see a new regime here in Seattle. Pete Carroll is gone. Look, he was a very good coach for his time. Obviously a lot of success in Seattle. But I think it was time for him to hand the reins over to somebody else. And that starts with, a defensive-minded head coach in Mike Macdonald, but also a new offensive coordinator in Ryan Grubb coming from the college ranks. Now, we know that offense in Washington, the Huskies, it's all about the passing game, right? Michael Penix, Rome Odunze, all of those guys. But he actually likes to run the ball. He's pretty good at running the ball. This is where he comes from. He's got an offensive line background, a lot of different looks that he has planned for this offense. And I really think this offense is going to run the ball more than people expect. So I think that's going to make more success for Kenneth Walker. Ryan Grubb has a lot of zone looks he wants to use where Walker can thrive. I know Charbonnet will still have a role, but I think we see Kenneth Walker's best season yet. And I think he might finally crack the top 12 in terms of fantasy points.
I know technically James Cook was the RB12 last year in PPR leagues, but it sure didn't feel like it because he only averaged just over 13 points per game. That just shows you how bad the running back position was last year. But I think this year he can certainly cement himself as a top 12 running back, and it will feel like it for your fantasy team. Because you look at this Buffalo Bills offense and James Cook specifically, in the games where Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator, James Cook had 16 or more carries in 7 of those 9 games. This is counting the playoffs as well. And he had 21 red zone attempts in those 9 games. They obviously trusted James Cook to be the workhorse. And if you have any doubt, look at what they've done this offseason. Nothing at running back, really. They didn't sign anybody of any significance in free agency. And they drafted Ray Davis out of Kentucky, who doesn't worry me at all to threaten James Cook's workload. Not to mention the Bills last year. We think of the Bills as this pass-heavy team, right? Josh Allen, the former wide receiver Stephon Diggs, just throw it. They actually averaged the 6th most rush attempts per game last year of any team. And that got even more pronounced when Joe Brady took over. This is going to be a different Bills offense than what we're used to. They're going to be a more balanced offense. Yes, Josh Allen is going to vulture some touchdowns, but it's okay. We don't need James Cook scoring 20-plus touchdowns like Raheem Mostert last year. Not to mention, he still had over 50 targets, so he's going to be used enough in the passing game. And kind of like Kenneth Walker, another guy going into year 3, I agree. I think we see not only the best from Kenneth Walker this year, I think we see the best from James Cook that we've ever seen this year.
All right, now let's get one of these obvious breakout picks out of the way here. I got to talk about Zamir White, right? Like, I know this is a trendy sleeper. A lot of people will pick him to break out. I am too. I'm here for it because I've been here for it. I've been a fan of Zeus since he came out of the college ranks. He just needed an opportunity. I've been saying that the last couple of years, and now he's got it because the Raiders also didn't really do much at running back in the draft. Technically, they did take one with the very final pick of the 6th round. Come on, that's a depth pick only. And honestly, when I saw that they signed Alexander Madison, I just kind of breathed a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, his job is safe. Look, come on. Madison was let go by the Vikings. He had his chance last year, still averaging under 4 yards per carry. Again, it seems like he's nothing more than a backup these days, and Zamir White is going to be the guy. And he was the guy till the end of last year out of necessity because of that Josh Jacobs injury. And all he did was run the ball effectively. Look, in those 4 starts toward the season's end, when Antonio Pierce, who is now officially the new coach for the Raiders, took over, Zeus ran for 69, 145, 71, and 112 yards on the ground. Now, I also have to kind of mention that very first game where he only ran for 69 yards, yeah, that's nice. But that was that blowout, if you remember that game, 63-21 against the Chargers. I mean, they were letting everybody run the ball there because it was just a laugher from the beginning. And in that one game where he only got 71 yards, that was the game they lost, and they were playing from behind. And he caught 5 balls in that game, which is also interesting because that was the one thing we thought about Zamir White. He's not going to catch any passes. He actually caught more than we thought. And look, with either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, I like this for the running game because they just really can't afford to sit back and throw it 40-plus times, can they? I think they're going to want to control the ball on the ground, and they're going to want to run the ball. Remember, Antonio Pierce is a defensive-minded coach. He's going to want to pound the rock, and Zamir White is clearly going to benefit. 24 opportunities per game last year in those starts. Why can't he get even more this season? Now, what about in Chicago? Are there going to be enough opportunities to go around for their new running back?
I think so. I think we're finally, hopefully, going to see the DeAndre Swift breakout. We've seen it in spurts in his career, but never for a full season. We thought last year might be the year, right, going to the Eagles behind that offensive line. And he was great on the ground, went over 1,000 yards. Obviously didn't score as many touchdowns as we'd like because Jalen Hurts vultured a ton of touchdowns. The issue that we really saw with DeAndre Swift last year, though, that I don't think a lot of people realize, he only caught 39 passes because Jalen Hurts is not a guy that likes to check it down. He's always keeping his eyes downfield, and if it's not there, he'll just take off and run. When you look at DeAndre Swift, his first 3 years in the NFL, he had 46 or more receptions every year of his career, and that includes years where he didn't even play the full season. Now he's going to the Chicago Bears offense with rookie Caleb Williams. I know Caleb Williams has a cannon. I know this guy has an incredible arm talent, but he's a rookie. He's going to take safe throws if he can take them because he's going to have to get used to the speed of the NFL game. He's not going to just be able to stand back there in the pocket like he did in USC and chuck it 50 yards down the field all the time. DeAndre Swift could absolutely get back to getting 40, 50-plus receptions Let's not forget this Bears offense that we, kind of think like, oh, it's a terrible offense. You want no part of it. This offense could legitimately be one of the best offenses in the NFL, like we saw with Houston last year. They already had DJ Moore. They added Keenan Allen. They drafted Rome Odunze. They've beefed up that offensive line. As long as Caleb Williams isn't a total bust, this offense is going to be good, and DeAndre Swift will benefit from it. And unlike last year, Caleb Williams isn't going to vulture all the touchdowns from him. So I think this is the year we finally see DeAndre Swift fully break out.
All right, now at risk of picking too many running backs that aren't really pass-catching backs, I have to go one I think is too obvious here. We knew the Chargers were going to look to get our running back somewhere in the draft, but really, they passed on Blake Corum. They passed on everybody the first 4 or 5 rounds, and they settled on Kamani Vidal. Look, I'm very tempted to go with him as a sleeper who might break out as an RB1, but let's just stare at the obvious choice here. It's Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, who was brought over before the draft. Gus Edwards, who's reunited with offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Gus Edwards, who for the first time in his career almost got 200 carries last year and wound up with 13 touchdowns. Gus Edwards, who almost averages 5 yards per carry for his career and is now going to another very run-heavy offense. Yes, it's going to be way more run-heavy than everybody wants because this is what Jim Harbaugh wants, and this is why he brought in his OC. He's going to want to win with defense, ball management, and basically everything that the Chargers haven't been doing the last couple of years with a horrible defense and having to pass the ball a ton just to try to climb out of from behind. No, they beefed up the offensive line. They waited on running back. Gus Edwards is going to be that hammer. I get that he's going to be a little limited in PPR leagues just because, again, he doesn't really catch the ball. But, man, if I had to pick a guy, and I know touchdowns are something that you really don't want to try to predict, but if I had to pick a guy who might legit lead the league in touchdowns, I really think it's going to be Gus Edwards. Justin Herbert's not a quarterback. That takes the ball himself too often if he doesn't need to. Their pass catchers are still a work in progress, let's put it that way. So, man, I just really see a huge workload for Gus Edwards, a ton of touchdowns, and potential RB1. Any of those guys could be an RB1 this year. Who could be the tight end one this year? In other words, who's this year's Sam Laporta? Well, we've got our thoughts. Check it out.